Good morning. My name's Michael Jackson, and I'm going to talk about one of my more recent Luminogram prints. I've been making Luminograms now for about 5 to 6 years, and I always keep on trying to push forward and try something new and exciting. It's kind of what keeps me going, and I'm sure a lot of people keep on going for that reason, that they're always trying to push and try something new. So this particular piece is a recent one. It's quite a small print. I've done prints, luminograms, ranging from all different types of sizes. Different sizes cause all sorts of different problems, and different techniques as well that are needed, just solely because of the size. I find some of the larger ones, the 20 by 24 inch or whatever size prints, they are not necessarily more difficult than the smaller ones. They have a different way of having to go about sorting them out, but the actual physical making of them, the actual what is needed to get out of me to make them, seems to be just as straightforward as some of the smaller ones. And in fact, the smaller ones, I find when I make them, can be more intense, because there is a lot less being put into them physically, a lot fewer marks to be put into them. So you really have to sort of hone your vision down and make sure that whatever you're putting on there is really what is necessary and what you need to. So this piece, when you look at it, it is a silver gelatin luminogram. So all the marks are made by light, and I produced it on fibre paper. We're just using standard darkroom chemicals with a stop, developer, and fixer. And I then selenium tone it, and then I finally stain it in tea. And it's an unusual piece for me, with the sort of multiple strands of light being moved around the paper, are causing all sorts of different unusual and exciting, for me, exciting shapes. I was very influenced by Wayne Levin's photography of his underwater photography of fish, and when I see his pictures, there's something about him. I mean, I know there are lots of people that do underwater photography, but there's something about his that excites me more than others, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but I can only assume it's that undefinable something that a photographer or an artist brings to their work. It's something you can't quite put your finger on it, but it's something that excites you more than other people's work. So whatever he has got, he has definitely got it, and that the sense of his work, when I see his work, I see, not only do I see the movement of the fish, and how they swirl around, and round and round into these massive, incredible shapes, but I almost sense the warmth in the water. It's a strange thing. I can't quite put my finger on it, but because I think he does a lot of his photography out in Hawaii, you can almost sense how warm things are through his photography, and that, for some odd reason, comes across to me in his work. But when it comes to the actual physical, the shapes that he gets, the abstract shapes of the movements of the fish, um, it, it's something that's stuck in my brain, and it has done for many years. The way that you can get a solid shape, and it can actually have movement happening in it, um, without obviously it moving. And I found that a lot of my luminogram work that I've worked on, even though the way I work is completely different to the way he would work. I try, or it doesn't. I don't try to do it, but it just seems to come out naturally. That the work seems to be in mid flux. It seems to be as though it is just on the verge. I've caught it on a point where it's just on the verge of moving. So that is kind of what was in my mind, when I was working on this particular piece, um, and and I wanted to try something new, and I'd been drawing lines on the paper as well, making marks on the paper. I found that lines brought a whole new dimension to the paper. They kind of added some kind of an anchor to what was else was like floating around. The marks made with the light were the kind of like this strange moving floating circus that was happening in front of me, but the lines added something that I worked with them, and they didn't detract from it. They didn't make it worse. So I kept on trying out with the lines and working on with the lines until I got to a point where I found that they became almost like the bones of the whole thing. And this particular one I found through experimenting over a long period of time, that I found that like the shape of the cross or the crucifix was a really strong compositional way of drawing on the paper. It wasn't symmetrical and it wasn't exact, so that added something, added a bit of a rub to it. But for unexplained reasons, it really worked well, and I've done a number of pieces with the kind of the crucifix dimensions. But with this piece, I started off with that thought in my mind, but then, as you can probably tell from looking at the piece, I inverted it. I've turned it upside down, and I think that's been an important aspect of what I've been doing over these years, is that I've never allowed any strict rules to stop me changing something if I think that change would make it better. So I worked on this piece the other way up completely, with working in my mind as though that's how it was going to end up looking. But when I finished the piece and it was hanging up to dry, I think I actually hung it up to dry upside down for whatever reason. And then I was looking at it, and I could, I realised that actually it looks a lot better that way round. And then I took some photos of it with the iPad, and the iPad is such a brilliant tool, I find, for just trying things out and moving things around. And I finally put it to one side and didn't look at it for a few days, and then just popped it back into my mind again and looked at the photos, and lo and behold, definitely that way up for me was a stronger composition. So I've kept it that way, and that is how it's going to be. And the curves and the swirls, I wanted them to be divided up into sections. I didn't want them to be like a one mass. I wanted it to be almost like each quarter is a snapshot of a flurry of movement, but from a different angle or something like that. And I wanted them to somehow mesh together as a piece, but not be a piece as a whole, which I found when I was experimenting with that way of working. I found that to be quite an exciting, it added a new exciting dimension to it, which so often happens. If I find something that adds to the picture rather than takes away from the picture, then I'm going to leave it in there. So that's what I did. And the sphere, as so often I've found, is something that adds a strange sense of reality to it. And I find pictures are so interesting if they've got a sense of something that could almost be real in them, along with the fantastical. I think the mixture of the fantastical and the real come together really well. It gives the image a new way of being looked at, and for some reason I find it an exciting experience to sense something that could be real, but has this incredible unrealness about it, which you can't explain. And I think that kind of shows off that the benefits or the features of the silver gelatin paper. I think the way that silver gelatin paper can take light and be manipulated in a particular way, I think is unique amongst other art forms. I can't think of any other art form that can do it the same way that silver gelatin paper has, and I think it's got such a strong feature, and so many possibilities and so many ways to use it. I think this mixture of the fantastical and the realistic, like almost like the real and the unreal, being mixed together in this like a pot of sensual excitement on a blank bit of paper, I think is a thrilling thing. So that's my thinking behind that work. It came out differently to the way I was expecting it to. And also it pushed me, I was trying new techniques and new ideas, which when it works, it just sends me over the moon. I'm so excited about it, but quite often it doesn't work, but then there you go. That's the way things are. Anyway, I hope that's been interesting and it's shown you a bit of insight into the piece.